Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 29, 2018 session in our series on entrepreneurship in Asian high-tech industries. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center here at Stanford. We produce this series, and we want to thank our member companies for support that allows us to produce the series. So, from Bridgestone Corporation, Brilliant Hope Incorporated, Mitsubishi Research Institute, NEC, and also Ritsumeikan University. So it's always kind of a shock to me that suddenly here we are at the last session of the series. And when I think of all the things we were able to talk about and then all the things that we haven't yet been able to talk about, I realize that, we had a good series, but there's always more. And I think that for this last session, the kind of more that I want to talk about is the people who are building bridges between startup companies here and activities in Asia, or startup companies in Asia and activities here. And we also have three speakers, distinguished speakers, who represent different economies than we have been able to introduce in the series so far. So sitting closest to me is Ms. Elisa Chiu, and Elisa is the founder and curator behind Anchor Taiwan, a soft landing program that partners with governments, corporates, and tech communities to provide industry access and business intelligence. She came from Wall Street and has a decade of experience at investment banks and hedge funds. She also came to us from the University of Toronto with a Master of Financial Economics and UBC, University of British Columbia, with a BA Honors in Economics. She is a mentor at the Founder Institute, and I'm delighted that she'll be the first person to give us comments. Sitting next to Elisa is Mr. Varun Kanotra, and Varun is the managing partner of TechGrind Venture Capital. And he's a co-founder of TechGrind, which is an early-stage VC fund focusing on building tech unicorns in Southeast Asia. He started his first business developing inventory management solutions, and he's since launched ventures in technology and consumer products, finance, and real estate. He served as a management company to Fortune 500 companies, and he is a graduate of the Georgia Institute of Technology, my old home state. And furthest away from me is Mr. Jung Moon, and Jung has extensive professional experience in cross-border technology management between South Korea and Silicon Valley. In areas that range from information technology to clean tech. He was a senior director at AMB Property in Korea and managed a $125 million REIT fund. He was working with the Office of the Korean Consul General in San Francisco. He was helping to connect Korean technology in the U.S., and he's going to talk to us about his new venture, 101 Ventures. So we'll ask each panelist to give us 10 minutes of prepared remarks. Then I'll ask a question or two to get discussion going, and then we go interactive. I do have one business item for students who are registered for credit. Finish everything, all of your summaries, by whatever day and time is scheduled as the final exam of the course. That's critically important because I have to turn grades in on time so that you don't get hung up if you're graduating. So the scheduled exam time of the course is the day to get the last comment to me and any kind of makeup work that you have to get to me. Okay, so thanks very much for coming today. Elisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Dasher. And hello, everybody. My name is Elisa, as mentioned, founder and CEO of Anchor Taiwan. And today I'm here to share a little bit about Taiwan and about what I'm up to. So I think we have a very intelligent group of people here tonight. So I'm not going to go to a lot of basics, but I do want to point out something that maybe some of you might not have realized before. So how many of you have been to Taiwan here? Can you raise your hand? Awesome. Wow. Actually a pretty good percentage here in this room. So you probably know that we are this tiny little island by China with a lot of nature, beauties, with 23 million of people over there. A lot of people might not realize that actually, even though in terms of economy, we are considered pretty advanced and pretty developed, but if we were to dig into nominal GDP and GDP adjusted for PPP, which is purchasing power parity, there's actually a big discrepancy. So in the world, 2017, according to the data from IMF, this is the latest data, basically according to the nominal GDP, we're about 30 in the world, so not too bad. But then if we were to look at the number adjusted for PPP, which is basically the money that you can actually purchase goods, which is usually used as an indicator for standard of life or quality of life, then we're actually top 20 in the world. So this is actually something for you to bear in mind, because this will be actually pretty important when it comes to decision to hire people or a decision to potentially start a business over there. So in nominal like USD terms, that's basically about 25,000 versus 50,000 kind of like difference. And you might not realize which brands comes from Taiwan, because we're known to be very good at making stuff behind the scene. However, we are actually in your daily life. So I don't know how many logos you can actually recognize from these slides. Actually, can you shout out anything that you can recognize? ASUS, yes. Acer, D-Link, anything else? Foxconn? Lite-On? Wow, okay, we have someone who knows Lite-On. So, which one? Yes. So basically, we do play a very important role, especially in hardware manufacturing in the world. Like, say for example, a lot of people might not know that, but if you take Caltrain, the LED lights actually above the track is manufactured by Lite-On. 50% of smart street lights in the US is manufactured by Lite-On. Foxconn, of course, the biggest consumer electronics manufacturer in the world. They're Apple's biggest manufacturing partner. So I guess now we have all agreed that Taiwan actually plays a pretty important role in hardware. This is basically part of our heritage. But what's going on over there in recent years, apart from hardware? About a month ago, there is this article on Forbes about why Google, IBM, and Microsoft are all expanding in Taiwan this year. So Google, basically, in case you haven't realized, now actually has the biggest engineering sites in Asia in Taiwan after their acquisition of HTC. In addition to that, they're actually hiring more than 300 people and training 5,000 students, especially in AI, in Taiwan this year. IBM, Microsoft, they're all spending millions of dollars building R&D labs, cloud research labs, and hiring hundreds of people over there. So why are they there? Actually, the hiring manager from Google, there's a quote from her that the most rewarding acquisition through that deal with HTC is the expansion of the talent pool. A lot of people are actually in Taiwan to seek for readily, kind of like easily trainable talent. And this is actually very important with the hardware heritage, which is related to what I'm going to point out now. So actually, currently, all of the buzzwords in technology, crypto mining, blockchain, AI, autonomous driving, like big data, you name it. All of this has one common denominator. They all require massive processing power. And this is different from 10 or 20 years ago when Silicon Valley, well, after that initial silicon boom, like basically with internet company, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, Google, the huge difference is that now the revolution requires more than just writing codes. You actually do need hardware to be a part of this equation in order to actually make the next revolution. And guess where we have all of this? We have the talent who knows how to work around hardware. And actually in March, Taiwan's export actually rose by almost 17%. because of this huge boom and demand in crypto mining related and AI autonomous driving related demand in chips, in supercomputer. So we're actually seeing even the major startup accelerators in Taiwan at works. Say, for example, in Taiwan Accelerator, both of them are very good friends of Anchor Taiwan. They're repositioning themselves, focusing now purely on deep tech kind of companies. So mainly in AI and blockchain. That's actually a very important and very interesting trend to see. So why am I here? Born and raised in Taiwan, but been to a lot of places in the world, but why Silicon Valley? So here, how many people do you recognize actually on these slides? Two, all right. What's the common denominator of these people? I'm sorry? Entrepreneurs, yes. Anything else? Stanford, maybe some of them, yeah, but okay, they all share Taiwanese roots, in case you haven't realized that. Jensen Huang, born in Taiwan, and I think he came here when he was like 12, like basically a young student. They either came here as a young student or they were raised by Taiwanese parents. So they all have roots in Taiwan. And this is actually a very important trend because now the second or third generation of these Taiwanese entrepreneurs, their success basically can easily be translated into mentorship and capital for entrepreneurs and founders with Taiwanese link. Because naturally, after they're successful, they're thinking about how to give back, they want to do more, they want to explore their roots in Taiwan. We're seeing, say, for example, NVIDIA, their AI initiatives with the Taiwanese government, and a lot of those people in the previous slides, they've been in Taiwan at conferences, talking to young entrepreneurs. So this is actually something very important to leverage on. And I guess, like with the next two speakers, and also the fact that you're here, we probably don't need to convince you that there are a lot of great opportunities in Asia. I would argue that a lot of entrepreneurs here, of course, Asian Americans, but even if you're not Asian, because of this natural sort of like connection with Asian Americans here, you actually have an unfair advantage if you want to conquer the Asian markets. Because you probably, chances are, you have some sort of connections over there that can basically help you find the right manufacturers or basically find the right partners over there. So a lot of people that have come across here, especially if they have some sort of like embedded link with Asia. Now they're seeing the opportunities, not just in China, but also in Southeast Asia and all that. They're thinking this is our time. How do we actually leverage the market intelligence and branding capacity and all that here in the States while having Asia as the cradle for talents and all that for the success for their business? So, and of course here, being in Silicon Valley, we get to meet all of the ecosystem builders from around the world, which is really amazing. So what exactly is Anchor Taiwan, this organization that we started from 2017? Essentially, it's a platform for world-class professionals and entrepreneurs to grow, experience, and succeed in Asia. And specifically, we do it through a 30-day residency program to provide very deep industry access as well as culture and market immersion. So we select people from around the world. Silicon Valley is a very important base because I have a base in San Francisco, but we also have friends from Europe, from Africa. Basically, they all spend 30 days on the ground, living and working like a local with daily activities with salons, workshops, tech talks, and all that in Taiwan to actually gain that actual local intelligence. We have founders from 500 startups, Y Combinators, and some of the top tech companies from around the world. So we essentially are providing ecosystem as a service because we are connected with local governments, corporates, tech communities, universities. So what we are trying to do is through 30 days of immersion, we prepare the professionals or entrepreneurs who are interested in the Asian markets with the connections, resources, and the tools that they need in order to be successful. We partner with a lot of local ecosystems for our events and workshops. And these are some of our examples. If you're interested, you can actually go onto our website for more organization. We do a lot of events for the sake of, one, introducing our members to and integrate them with the local communities. And we also foster a lot of conversations. So basically what's going on in Silicon Valley versus what's going on in Asia. Let's put the people together, let them talk, let them inspire each other, let them have the opportunities to actually collaborate. So we have already got our members who met their co-founders or business partners and then ended up moving to Taiwan to start a new business. Or like people who actually started collaborating and hiring people in Taiwan to leverage on the resources over there. So that's why we do all of this are actually our actual pictures from our actual events that we have done. From 2017, we have done basically right now almost 20 events from most of them in Taiwan, some of them here. We have already got about 1,500 people who have gone through our events. So this is us. We have basically, I'm flying out literally after this tonight because we have a cohort coming up in June. And then the next two will be in September and November. Specifically, I'm very excited that we are going to actually have 2 hardware innovation tours this June. So if you're interested in knowing about how to deal with manufacturers, how to actually tackle the supply chain, we're going to have actual training sessions as well as factory tours to actually educate you about that. We're also very excited that we just partnered up with Impact Hub to have mission-driven type of entrepreneurs and help them with their access and knowledge when it comes to circular economy, sustainability over there in Asia. So that's me, Elisa. You can find me at elisa@anchortaiwan.com. Feel free to follow us on our social media if you want to find out what we're up to. Thank you.
Okay, Elisa, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, why don't we trade places? If you'll go down to the end and Varun come up here.
All right.
While I'm changing slides, though, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Elisa, it used to be that traditionally the approach to international business was that you should grow your domestic market until you've got enough funds to really support overseas operations. Why is it different now? I mean, because what you're talking about are not companies that already have $50 million a year in sales, right? I mean, these are companies that are really still early stage startups, right?
That's correct. I would say it's still very important to focus for entrepreneurs. So basically for our members, usually either they're at the early stage, so they're still exploring. Basically, it is important to focus on your home market, I would argue, like somewhere that you're most familiar with, because it's already so hard to build a company. It doesn't make sense for you to basically spread yourself too thin. However, because of the global landscape in entrepreneurship and in basically globalization, I would say any entrepreneur, you should actually start thinking about how to go global from day one. You don't necessarily need to execute that right away, but you have to bake that into the equation. You have to know as an entrepreneur where to go for the best talents, the most quality, like the best partners in whichever sector that you're in. So either come, we have a lot of members who come at the early stage when they're maybe exploring an idea or MVP, but they want to have the right understanding and resources and network in Asia in case later on they want to get into that markets.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back. There are some more questions I'm sure that we can talk about during the Q&A session. Varun, the floor is yours.
All right. So I'll spend a few minutes, I've kind of broke up the presentation into 2 pieces. We'll talk about Southeast Asia as a market, and then I'll spend the back half talk about TechGrind, the incubator side and the venture capital side. And So my business partner, Ephraim, who really spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, ran the incubator along with our team there, couldn't join us today. So, but I'll go over some of the key components of what we built there and talk about what we're doing with the venture fund, which is what primarily I'm involved with here in the States. Yeah.
Okay.
So how many people here know about the ASEAN region? Okay, very good. So for the rest, so just quick history. So ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It was formed back in 1967. So the 5 countries in Southeast Asia came along, said, well, we're going to operate and like a mini EU, if you will, open up trade, open up our borders, let people move around. And now there are 10 countries in the as part of the membership in ASEAN. What's really interesting and why I love this slide is because where we've drawn this circle gives you an idea. If you look at, there's India, 1.3 billion people, 1.6 billion in China, about 650 million in ASEAN. That's about half of the world population lives inside this circle. I mean, it's amazing when you pause and really think about that, because when you think about consumerism and how ripe this market is for not just disruption on the technology side where we're focused, but also in terms of online media, in terms of gaming. You look at the OTT space. So there's huge amounts of disruption going on in Southeast Asia. Now, Southeast Asia is the third largest growing economy after China and India. 4 million people in Southeast Asia coming online every single month. So what's happened there is where they had little to no internet access, they've sort of leapfrogged to having mobile phone access, right? So, and then almost half of the percent of the population is under the age of 30. So now you have young people, with mobile technology that have exposure, through that technology to the Western way. They're disrupting, the existing industries there. So, just a huge mental shift. And I'm not saying there are not challenges. There's plenty. But overall, when you look at the growth picture, the ASEAN region and the arbitrage that exists between where they are and where we are is tremendous, is massive. So they have a long way to go, and they can do that with wind behind their sails in terms of having the technological power to be able to do that. So, if you visit the U.S. ASEAN Business Council website, they're in Washington D.C., and their sole purpose is to increase the relationship between the United States and the ASEAN region. The projections there, and since we're focused on the digital side, the technology side, I'll kind of speak to that, but expected to grow over 5 times by 2025. Now, Google did some research with Temasek a couple years ago, and they came back last year and revised their numbers because the growth that's happening in the region is even faster than what they had studied and projected. So they're obviously actively looking in the region. Amazon, Alibaba from China is looking in the region. So a lot of interest in the tech economy in Southeast Asia. So ASEAN, right up there growth-wise, GDP per capita is at the cusp of what's called this S-curve. There's a sigmoid function in mathematics which is used to represent demographic growth. And if you study the S-curve, you'll see that there's a point in that S-curve where the trajectory of growth just goes exponential. So that, if you map that, it's about $3,500 to $4,000 of GDP per capita, and we're right at that cusp. So let's talk about why that's happening. So if you look at disposable income, if you look at the growth in the middle class, these young people in the region, and this is also happening. I mean, everywhere else in Asia. There's by 2030, 4 billion people are expected to enter this, to be part of this middle class. So when you look at, we were talking about consumerism before, what are these people spending their money on, right? So a lot of it is in the digital space because it's so new as an entrant to the market. So $16 to $100 of disposable income per day, which their parents, grandparents didn't have. What do they want to do? They want to buy, the first thing they want to do is they actually want to buy a mobile phone, right? They want to be connected. They want to be on Facebook. So if you look at Thailand, for example, where our incubator is based, Thailand has 75% penetration of Facebook. Compare that to the US, it's about 58, 60%. They spend 4 hours a day online. 4 hours a day. Just amazing. So if you're a startup here looking to expand, I mean, this is a perfect region, to look into. If you're a VC fund or if you're an angel investor, you're looking to deploy capital. If you compare the overall returns in the equity markets, in the bond markets, you look at Jeremy Grantham, who runs GMO, the fund, their projections are over the next 7 to 10 years, the returns here in the United States are negative. the real growth is coming from Asia and specifically Southeast Asia. Now we don't hear much about Southeast Asia yet, but I would argue that in the next 5-10 years we're gonna start hearing more and more. China wasn't as much in the news here in the United States 10 years ago. That's changed. China takes up all the news now. Southeast Asia, not so much yet. We're still in the early stages, going up that S curve, but we're definitely getting there to that tipping point. So we'll talk a little bit about the problems in the tech sector there, but let me actually go to this slide. So I'll talk a little bit about TechGrind. So TechGrind went in the region 5 years ago, and we saw this issue there. We saw that there was really no ecosystem in the region helping founders, locals there, start companies, right? So we said, okay, so we launched. We've got 5 different companies operating in the region, but the first one that was launched was a TechGrind hub. So we started bringing people together, hosting events, weekly, monthly. Now that we do monthly events, quarterly events, annual events, just to get people excited about technology and let them know that we have presence from the West. All of us and my partners, we're all entrepreneurs ourselves, bringing that knowledge local to the community over there, helping them start companies. So we started with TechGrind Hub. We have a co-working space over there to allow for entrepreneurs to get together and congregate and work. We have an angel syndicate where we teach angel investors how to be angel investors. We do a weekend-long workshop. We have a VC fund now we're working on to bring capital from the West, from the United States here into the region and do follow-on funding in Southeast Asia. So as we incubate companies, so there's when the incubator first started about 2.5 years ago, we had 900 startups that applied. We accepted 40 into the program. There's 21 companies in the portfolio right now. 9 of them are ready for follow-on funding, ready to graduate. So it's the longest running incubator in the region. It runs 18 months. And we join them as co-founders and handhold them through the process of starting a tech company. Especially if you're brand new, you have an interesting idea. Because if you look at the region, a lot of the basic technological problems have not been solved yet. You look at payment solutions. You shouldn't have to go to 7-Eleven to pay your electric bill. I mean, we're we're in the 21st century here. So that's what I was talking about when I said the arbitrage of opportunity is tremendous in the region. Little to no competition right now. Very few participation because we're early on. So the opportunity to scale and grow with the right mentorship, with the right model, business plan, the team, and you've got tremendous room to grow. So, just to give you guys another number, I mean, 5 years ago, there were 0 tech unicorns in Southeast Asia. Now there's 7. 7 companies worth over $1 billion. And we're just getting started. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity, a lot of room for growth. So talking more about TechGrind. So, we run the incubator. We join them as co-founders. We run psychometric assessment on the founders just to see if they're crazy enough to start a tech startup over there, right? And we teach them, different aspects of building a company, and then as they graduate, as their companies mature, the VC fund, the plan of the VC fund is to help do follow-on funding. Now that the model is proven, these companies are off the ground, and expand that model and do more investments in the region and more successful, proven MVPs. There. So let me go back to kind of quickly talk about what are some of the issues. So great region for growth, a lot of room for growth, but the problem there is of course lack of knowledge, right? The mindset there is where their parents, grandparents, worked in industries where you took on a job and you kind of worked for 30, 40 years, and now here we are. Younger generation bringing in this whole concept of disruption and fail and keep failing and fail fast, and that's hard for people to grasp, right? So you definitely cultural mindset takes a while to change. But with existing unicorns in the region now, that helps validate that yes, they're here is another avenue to do that. Now another reason being, not enough mentors, not enough people with this mentality from the West, in the region, or people's the practices there are very traditional. So corruption, another big hindrance, just generally in Asia. Lack of investment capital. So there were $7 billion deployed in VC funds last year, which is double from the year before. 2016 was $3.5 billion. So the numbers are, we're still early stage. We deploy about 20-30 billion here in the United States in a quarter. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities. So TechGrind, what we did was we said, okay, so we when we first started the program, made our mistakes, and through failure we learned, there's a lot more hand-holding that's needed. So, and we are very hands-on with our startups as we incubate them. So we said, okay, can we bring our knowledge, our experience, our skill set, join them as co-founders, and work with them in developing these companies, and really build that mini Silicon Valley, if you will, through this Y Combinator type model. Keep the system independent of government influence, so it's run completely independent. It's all private funded. Same thing on the angel investment side, and turn these startups that we've incubated into success stories. So now that we've done that, the model is proven. We're ready to scale that, through the VC fund. So that's TechGrind.
Okay. That's great, Varun. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, before you change seats.
Yeah.
So you've been doing the incubator for 2.5 years already, and I'm guessing it's an 18 to 24 month kind of period.
Right.
So are you on your second set mostly, or are you kind of rolling over and doing like 8 companies a year, or how do you do this?
Yeah, so that's kind of where the 9 companies that are mature enough to exit, because one thing we learned is, and we talked about kind of expanding that even longer to 24 months, and we're not, kicking companies out. We want to give them enough time to develop their product to mature, and knowing where the region is, and the kind of guidance that they need. The plan is to have them exit. So yeah, so the second round will be starting. So now one thing that we've also added here back in end of first quarter is an 8-week accelerator program, which is a pre-incubation solution, which takes no equity in the startups. It's completely free, and it's just to encourage more founders to join and learn, and they learn about marketing, they learn about sales, product development, the engineering side of things, how to do a product market fit, how to build an MVP, how to pivot, and then qualify them into the incubator. So yeah. So
the space is located in Bangkok, but you're focusing on 5 ASEAN countries, 5 of the ASEAN countries right now. I think a lot of people sort of see ASEAN as kind of still more virtual than the EU is, because there's no common currency. It really is 10 or 11 very different countries.
Right.
But yet, people can come from any of these 5 countries and be resident in Bangkok for the program.
Well, so yeah, we most of our founders that we meet, they either come to us with concepts, with ideas, through our events. So we've cast a pretty wide net through the hub, which has been operating for a while now. We've had over 20,000 people go through our events. So we a lot of times meet founders, companies that they haven't formed yet, and they're in the ideation stage. So, but yeah, we definitely encourage people to come through our programs, and then they can live regionally nearby, so we can continue to work remotely and mentor them. Okay. Yeah.
That's great. Why don't we do the musical chairs?
Okay. Do I just stay here?
That's all right. Yeah.
So, our comments now. Oops. Here we go. What happened here? Didn't like me pulling the cord. Our final set of comments is from Mr. Jung Moon. Floor is
All right.
yours.
So thank you for having me here, Dr. Dash. And you'll lose our screen right now, but
Oh, we lost the screen.
yeah.
Hold on. This is probably, now I understand why it was unhappy. Come in, Rangoon.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It happened all the time. I travel, just international. So, hi everyone. My name is Chiu. I'm a CEO of SV101. SV101 is a tech accelerator focusing on Korean innovative and startup, helping those companies coming to Silicon Valley. At the same time, we are helping Silicon Valley companies, just connecting and bridging into the Korea market. And then our interest of industry, technology industry are IT, ICT, and AI robotics, and digital health and AR, VR. So if you are working on these domains, we are definitely bring those guys and open the dialogue with those people. Okay, SV101 constantly building a platform, bridging the Korean startups getting into the Silicon Valley. And then this is kind of critical at the moment because last 5 years, Korean government spent tremendous amount of money kind of cultivating, fostering startup and then entrepreneurship in Korea. And now, with tremendous amount of effort and then money injected into this building up the ecosystem in Korea, it is about time we can bring more Korean startups get into the global marketplace. At the same time, we are also helping the Silicon Valley startups get into the Korean market, and then there is mutual or bilateral business exchanges can be placed in terms of cultivating the entrepreneurship in both regions. So we have worked hard last 2 years, tested the SV101 Tech Accelerating platform, which is consists of preparation and the acceleration and then market access and growth. So we laid off like a 1 week or 2 week intensive courses in Korea, cohort preparation class or training workshops. And then we bring those guys into Silicon Valley for 3 months and then try to validate or evaluate, test out their product and solutions. And then we are helping those guys localization in the Silicon Valley or in the global marketplace. Why we're doing that? Because we are kind of providing a constant support and promotion, not only focusing the Silicon Valley, at the same time we're targeting different countries like China and other European countries. So I'll give you kind of the portrait of Korean entrepreneurship since the last 15 years. Starting 2004-2008, Korean the economic growth rate was 4 to 5% annually, and this was based on the strong export and the internal consumption. But getting into the 2009 to 2012, right after the global financial crisis, Korea is severely devastated by the tremendous unemployment rate that hit the record high, and then there were no new jobs for the newly graduate college students. So that situation continued until 2012. So seeing these problems, Korean government is a plan to cultivating entrepreneurship and then building up this startup ecosystem, pledging like $33 billion over 5 years to just provide a startup ecosystem and infrastructures for startups. And then as a result of that, there were about 17 Korea innovation centers throughout the Korea, so that each the innovation centers focus in different industry vertical.
Now, when you say innovation center, are you talking about something that's rather large like Silicon Valley, or are you talking about a building or a neighborhood in the town?
Yeah, so it's combined of the buildings and tying up with the universities and local angel investors and VCs. So that is the developed in the major metro area throughout Korea. So Seoul has its own, innovation centers, and then Busan also does the same, but they have focusing in a different industry and the technology. So as you know, there is new Korea. The Korea elected a new president, and then Mr. Moon Jae-in, and then his administration realized that the previous government effort is not, just effective, and then too much broad, just supporting programs. So they are kind of focused on to helping the startup, working along with small and mid-sized companies, so that they can, just collaborating on their, development, technology, R&D, those kind of stuff. The behind this scene, why does the new Korean government try to kind of put this initiative in place? Because they're trying to minimize the government interference on the startup ecosystem, so that they are adding more 50 the startup accelerator throughout this year. So currently there is only 50, but government is allow more, just globally experienced business professionals come to Silicon Valley, come into Korea, and then incorporate the global accelerator in Korean market. Also, there's the other thing is that I like to highlight is starting this year, first quarter of 2018, Korean governments allow the Korean, just a fund going abroad into the different countries or different regions. So, meaning is that until 2017, the government not allow the Korean money go outside of Korea. So starting this year, there is a humongous high, just inquiries that are getting from the Korean venture capital or LPs and GPs, just trying to tackle along the opportunities, making their creating their investment funds in Silicon Valley, so that they can start investing onto the new technology or innovative startups in the valley. So this is kind of overall picture of the Korea's tech startup ecosystem. There is a government comes in, and there is a co-working space available, and then there is a accelerator, domestic Korean accelerators, and then global accelerators comes in. I think there is a Spark Labs, and then 500 startups already came into Korean market. And then the Korean, the funding mechanism has been, just evolved, so that there are kind of seed round and Series A round investors in one stage, and then followed by the Series B and growth fund, capital or fund available. So this is entire kind of just that they are creating the entire startup cultivating ecosystem in Korea as of today. So like I said before, there is a 17 Korean innovation centers available. And if you are willing to tackle along the particular industry or technology verticals, you can just go to some places. Like if you're working in the Samsung, you have to go where the Samsung Electronics is, right? And then if you're working with the Hyundai or Kia automobiles, you got to go this place, so they can help you from the ground. And then these are the mainly 5 categories that you will get the government support. But I don't want to just kind of, there is like a new entrepreneur support, tech startup support, and then global expansion support, and female entrepreneur also get the support. But moreover, I like to highlight the restart support package, because previous time, just most of the Korean entrepreneurs got failed, and then you're done. That is, I think, as far as I know, most of the Asian culture. So once you failed, you're not able to start, restart on your program or startups or get hired. So basically, you're stuck in the middle, do nothing, okay? That one was, I think, starting until the 2015 or 16. But the government see this problem, so cultivating the kind of constant, just a support for the entrepreneurs continue working on their project or startups. They are providing this restart package for the entrepreneurs who got failed first time. So, however, there is some challenges overall still exist in the Korean market right now. So, the one thing that I like to highlight is the Korean government has too much of regulations incorporating startup accelerator, because this is a government registration program. If you like to come to Korea and then incorporate the startup accelerator, you gotta register under government system. So also another drawback is the government is monitoring all your activities throughout all the accelerators in the Korean market right now. So that is kind of just having a challenging right now. So but throughout this year or next year, the government will be able to kind of lower the barriers or easy on the registration on startup accelerators. And then another hurdle is if the startup or entrepreneur got government funding, they have to have the kind of just submitted a necessary amount of documents to the government agency. So that is a burden for the startups, because they have to focus more on their product and on the companies. And then also this is the mandatory. They have to attend the mandatory seminars and the mentoring sessions. So that is another one, because the government always call upon to attend. This is mandatory. You got to attend this event and then to that event. So that's totally unnecessary, And then so government funded a lot of money into the startups. So they are kind of rolling out heavy due diligence annually. So at the end of year, in December timeframe, you have to providing a lot of documents for the government auditings. And still, even though governments and then Korean, just a lot of people is kind of focus more into the global, just a promotion platform. But Korea does need a lot of, just global business experienced people coming to Korea, helping Korean startups, because we are very lack of those experienced Silicon Valley or global marketplace experienced business professionals in Korean market as of today. So very handful. So Korea should inviting more experts and the professionals, investors coming to Korea, helping the Korean startups and the entrepreneur ecosystem.
John, before you go further, I want to ask you, why is the government regulating accelerators and startups like this? Are they concerned about fraud, or is it because there is tax money in just about everything, or
yes,
what's the real issue?
Yeah, so once you just register your accelerator entity through the government system, the accelerator can be realized the tax incentives on their capital earnings, capital gaining. So, and then also the startups also getting government support and grants, so that they are heavily regulated at the moment as of today. But it will be easy on just moving forward.
Okay.
So and another one is if you start a startup in Korea, there is always hard to find the top-notch talented people in Korea, because most of the Korean students who are studying abroad, they are trying to remain in that particular region. For instance, Silicon Valley. If any of the Korean students study in Stanford, they are not willing to go back to Korea, right? So we always, even though we have a great infrastructure, we have great programs, but most of the top talented people is not going to, just coming back to Korea and then kind of participate into this kind of fostering program. And then this is more toward the latter part of the startup business, but the successful Korean business in Korea always having a trouble or problem facing a business flipping, when they just come into Silicon Valley. So meaning is that once they just have a kind of just a tremendous success in Korea and then try to come to Silicon Valley, and then there is still just tax imposed by the government. It's I think in between 30 to 35% of on your tax capital gain taxes. So this is the challenge at the moment for the Korean startups. And then just to kind of briefly mention about some of the advantage in Korea right now. So like I say, the government poured a lot of money to kind of just building a startup ecosystem, and then the communities. They build the several startup campuses and innovation centers providing all-in-one services. So if I want to start my own business and then just knock on the door, step in this particular center, and they will provide everything. Okay, and then also the government provide the free co-working spaces along with the free use of tech labs. So no charges at all. Okay, so and then also there are so many different types of entrepreneurship workshops, training programs, and also. The local government and the Korean Startup Accelerator is always, just providing this type of learning program, throughout annually. And then the other one that I like to highlight is the funding availability in Korea right now. So there's a tons of money available for your R&D project in Korea. Also, there is tons of money available for your, just own startup, just program. I mean, the business. The TIPS program is one of the highlights that I like mention. The Technology Incubator program for startup is the matching fund. So it is a 129, I think. So, and then. Also, the Korean government kind of cultivating angel investors, angel groups in Korea, so that they are kind of easier to access angel and going into the financial investors like VCs, and then getting into the CVC. Okay. So with this kind of just effort, Korea is now getting attention from global investors. So many of financial investors, the venture capital investors investing on the Korean companies like a Sequoia Capital investing in Coupang, and then Formation 8 investing in Yellow Mobile, and then Goodwater Capital investing in MimiBox. This is more like a Silicon Valley venture capital investing in Korean companies. And then strategic investment, there is Intel investing acquired Olaworks, and then Goldman Sachs invested in 배달민족. This is auto food delivery service. And then Rakuten acquired the Viki, which is the Korean drama video streaming services. I think this.
Yeah, we need to move on pretty quick.
Yeah. So this is about my last page.
Ah, it was.
So
last
that, yeah.
Okay.
So that I can kind of guide you the portrait of the Korean startup ecosystem and entrepreneurship as of today. But starting this year, there will be more Korean startups that will come to Silicon Valley, tackle along the more opportunities, or just starting, just adapting their localization and for their business operation in the valley. So that's about me.
Okay. Thanks very much, John.
No problem.
So we've got Taiwan, where what you're doing, Elisa, is to bring startups from all over into Taiwan for some training and maybe acquisition of talent and setting up business relationships. Varun, what you're doing is really inside Asia, getting people around ASEAN into a center and helping them grow inside ASEAN. Mm-hmm. And Jung, what you're doing is getting Korean startup companies to come over here. All of this involves cross-border. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious how the programs, a lot of what you described is kind of, okay, this is Accelerator 101, right? You learn how to write a business plan, you get introduced to people, you do various things. What are the distinctive things you have to do to localize your services for the startup companies you're trying to reach? So maybe we should go with Elisa first. So something that's different from just, why not just do it at Y Combinator, right?
So, that's a very great question. I would say actually probably one, fundamentally, what's the core of entrepreneurship? I will argue that a lot of that is about empathy. It's about the ability of putting yourself in someone's shoes to solve an issue or a problem. And I would argue that one of the best benefits of getting to a place outside of your comfort zone is that it basically stimulates your ability of doing that. The understanding the cultural competency actually is a very important element of whatever business that you're building. So I would say in terms of localization, before I go into the details in terms of what we actually do on the ground for the people in our program, the benefit of putting yourself there, throwing yourself into a place that maybe you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture and all that. If you have any interest of getting into that markets or the markets around there, I would say if I were you, the first thing that I would do is to get myself there, because you need to understand the consumer habits, you need to understand what they like, and you can read all about this from here. But the reality is that you're not going to get that firsthand actual experience unless you actually get yourself there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Until you've actually spent some time in Asia and see how people use smartphones there.
Exactly.
You really don't get a sense of what it's like from this side of the Pacific. Vernon, what about your localization?
Yeah, so I would answer that this way. I mean, the reason why we can't do it at Y Combinator is because the problems that exist here, with the level of maturity we've had and the growth we've had over the last 40, 50 years of doing this are very different from what they are in Asia, right? Or Southeast Asia specifically. So in order to do that, I 100% agree. I mean, which is why our focus, on the incubator side, is to help entrepreneurs from the ground up build their startups in the region. And we're focused on 5 countries. We're focused on Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam.
But let me nail down into this a little bit more.
Okay.
Is the model of company startup development that you're talking about different from the model that everybody knows here in Silicon Valley?
I mean, the differences are that it's a model that's not trying to copy the West or try to be like a Y Combinator or a Silicon Valley, but the model is to allow for the local young population or people who've been in an industry and see a problem now have another avenue, right? That where they want to find a solution to a problem that they're having maybe in their job, or people coming out of college having worked for a few years, get together with their friends. They want to solve a problem. So to me, a big reason for entrepreneurship is value addition. I mean that's how I, not just in business, but live my life as well, is, where can I and how can I continue to add value, right? So that's what's critical. So aligning with those entrepreneurs on the incubator side and then on the VC side with that pool of investors is very important. You've got to know your why. You've got to understand the challenges behind starting companies and failing, which inevitably will happen. So we encourage that as much upfront as you can, because you have to go through those cycles, because the learning is really on the other side. So until you start taking those steps and crawling and then eventually walk and run and we'll help you do that, you won't get to those learnings. So if you tried something and you failed and this is not for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So
okay.
So
John, what about what you're doing with the Korean startups that are coming here? What are the kind of sort of conceptual ideas that maybe they bring in that are different than a startup here?
So we have conducted 8 or 9 times startup bootcamp in Korea, because as I mentioned, there is a preparation stage. But the most important thing for the Korean startup entrepreneurs, before they come, we gotta change their mindsets. Switching gears, just to understand the Silicon Valley ecosystem, how you just do the network, how you do business in the Silicon Valley, how you meet participate in the local, ecosystems. Without that, last 5 years, there's about thousands of Korean startups came into Silicon Valley, and once they just complete the mission and never coming back again. So this is the fundamental issue. I think most of the Koreans, having a problem, seeing just a big picture or different, the passage in a Silicon Valley. So,
well, and of course, I think that for everybody, and certainly Americans are like this too, we're kind of a big island country. And it's more stress, it's harder to work in a foreign environment than it is to work in your own native environment.
Right.
That's just a fact. So how do you see this developing out? Do you see young people who are more interested, or is this kind of always going to be a very small group out of all the people who are doing entrepreneurship, who are really interested in this kind of international, global approach?
I think the group is small right now, but the numbers show, and the growth projections show that that's changing very rapidly. And if you thought the world was flat 10 years ago, just look now. Right? I could Instagram a picture and send it to my family overseas, and instantaneously. Same thing is happening with payment solutions. So a lot of the friction globally is getting suppressed, right? So it's making it easier. People have more access to data from overseas, and more people have traveled there. So I think it's definitely up.
Elisa, you had a comment on this, I could tell.
I definitely see a huge trend in this. I think especially the millennial, one, they don't want to wait until they retire to explore the world. They really want to just get themselves there, and then they have a very different style of experiencing new culture and new life, and potentially even move their professional work around that. So basically, I'm seeing an increasing number of location-independent entrepreneurs, and with that kind of lifestyle, they can a lot more easily take advantage of the resources from other parts of the world and basically other ecosystem. So I am seeing an increasing interest in basically people moving around to Asia, to Latin America, to Europe. A lot of my friends here in the Valley, they still treat this as a very important center because this is still the Mecca for investors, a lot of activities, a lot of ideas. But increasingly, people will spend more and more time away from here, partially because it's getting quite expensive to stay here. So as an entrepreneur, how do you actually extend your runway so that you can basically have the most resources to actually buy the time so that your services or products can be successful? And coming back to what you just mentioned, we, in terms of how localization is important, a lot of time we speak about Asia as if it's like a single destination. We often forget how diverse Asia is. So localization is, of course, the key. We actually kick off our every program with a cultural orientation. Our day one is always cultural orientation. So we actually walk people through to do business. Even small cultural nuances can actually kill a relationship for you, right? Even how you actually hand over your business card, as little things as that. If you don't have this kind of awareness, and also how to deal with investors over there, what's the differences in terms of what they think, what they're looking for? There's actually really a lot to learn.
Great. Joe, comments on this one? Or?
So, yes, of course, just very briefly. And then, just the last 5 years, Korea has, just cultivating a startup ecosystem, young people getting into the, more onto the, start on their own startups. But basically, this is driven by the necessity. Meaning is that they find to work and then find just employment through this kind of government supporting system. But nowadays, it's changing a slightly different picture. So most of these days, young generation or entrepreneurs starting see the opportunistic, entrepreneurship in Korea. So meaning is that they're seeing the huge opportunities in the global marketplace as they just committed themselves. So this is a big change. So the number-wise, there was only 2,000 startups in year 2000, but as of today, there is about a little over 100,000 startups, just in Korea in 2017. So there's more and more youngsters, or younger generations, just willing to kind of, just committed into the startup and the entrepreneurship ecosystem right now.
Okay, great. Let's open the floor. I saw your hand first.
Okay. I work with a lot of Nordic startup companies, and they're increasingly looking to Asia. And as you would expect, China is, gets the most attention. So why would maybe Nordic entrepreneurs want to go to Taiwan and set up operations there, as opposed to going into China, where I assume there are more and more incubators and accelerators and all kinds of programs, and with Shenzhen they can get prototypes built overnight and this and that. So how do you compete with that from Taiwan?
Great question. For me, it's not really about either or. It's probably more of a matter of time.
Okay.
So basically, I believe every place in the world, of course, we have some key ecosystems, but I believe that actually for them, there are probably a particular time frame during your entrepreneurial journey that place can add the most value to your startups. So Taiwan as a market, as a destination, of course, no comparison, small. However, it's a lot easier to navigate, especially when it comes to doing business in the Western standard, when it comes to IP protection, when it comes to navigating that ecosystem and being seen. Then leverage on the existing infrastructure and the connections that Taiwanese people have already got with China. That's, in a way, so much easier for a Westerner. If they're new to Asia, it's actually a great sort of like springboard.
So first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead, Ed.
You mentioned at TechGrind that you run psychological metrics on your founders. I'd be curious as to what you're looking for.
So, well, we're looking to understand how they think, right? How they problem solve, and then in addition to that, we compare the founders. So we want to have at least one full-time founder on the team. So, but as two or more people start working together, we want to understand the chemistry behind them working together. Have they had a previous relationship where they work together? If they have created previous success, that's obviously a plus. But a lot of founders that come to us are brand new. They've never started a company before. They're interested, they're excited, but they don't know how to take that next step. So, so these assessments allow us to get a little bit more into their head, if you will. Get to know them.
I saw several hands from over here. Okay, you first, then you. Okay.
All right. Since I'm a student from Indiana University, and I'm working on my own startup, and also I worked with some startups and entrepreneurs in China. I'm originally from China, and also entrepreneurs in this area. But I felt like it's completely different. But for working here and also in China, and they have a different culture and different regulations. So I'm thinking I'm very interested in the ASEAN area, which Veru just mentioned before. I just want to learn what's the difference of the entrepreneurs from ASEAN area and the entrepreneurs here in America, and how's because I felt in ASEAN area there has less regulations and more opportunities, but less regulations also mean more risk. So I just want to know
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the risk in any, just like there's a risk in a new startup, there's a risk in a new emerging economy, right? But the difference is, if I were to compare an entrepreneur in Southeast Asia with an entrepreneur here, I mean, as people, we have similar wants and needs, right? So it's important to understand what those are. What is your motivation for starting a company? Why, right? Is it just you want to get rich, or are you looking at, like I spoke about, value addition? Are you truly trying to solve a problem? And those are the ones, when you find that match where you get a direct hit with, an actual problem that exists in the space, and an entrepreneur. You look at Omise is a great example. Omise is a payment solution that is about to become a tech unicorn in Southeast Asia, and they saw the friction that exists in payment in the region, and work through and solve that problem. And now they're expanding like you wouldn't believe, because there's no competition. So you really have to understand that. But internal motivations are important. But as people, we all want success. We all want similar things. So I would say there are more similarities than differences, if you will, as to entrepreneurs in general. Not just Southeast Asia.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious on the matching on some of these programs, as well as the amount of equity, just as a comparison that would have been useful in the three regions. So I'm familiar with, say, some of the contributions from, say, in Israel or Singapore, where they do the matching 6:1 or 6.25:1.
So, okay,
and for
what kind of business models do you have for
and
the
then
startup
the
companies?
next level of the question would be, why would a accelerator or an entrepreneur come to you versus going directly to the program? That's your value add, and do you take equity for that?
So that's the case. I think I just take the answer.
You go first.
So we are teaming up with those the first round or seed round investors who participate in TIPS program, the incubation program, which is the partially funded by the government, which is more toward to the grant.
So it's like a non-recourse loan?
Yeah.
So if you fail, you don't pay back?
You don't have to pay back.
Yeah.
So that's where the government comes in to the back up the program. So once you just working on your own startups and then failed in the 2 years later, then you don't have to pay back. You don't have any obligations to.
So is it purely fee-based, what you're getting from the startup companies that come in?
No, so actually our teams in Korea just participate in the first round, initial round of investment. So that's about $100,000, taking about 10 to 15% of the equity investment. Because at that time we take a risk because there is nothing, just a tangible assets or products and solution is in place. But we are evaluating the potential in the future. So that's the how it works right now.
Okay.
So once you just
good. Let's move on. Let's move on. And Varun, what is your business model?
Yeah. So our model. So I talked about the pre-incubation program, right? So which is free, no equity, no upfront fee, which is really encouraging anyone and everyone who wants to learn more about startups to come in. As you go through that 8-week program, you qualify. If you do for the incubation program, which lasts 18 months, that's where we take an equity and we join them, our entire team joins them hands-on as co-founders to help them drive their product and get them to a point of maturity where they can graduate from the program with a solution that fits the market. So
okay, and of course the raising of the VC funds will allow for follow-on funding after that.
Yeah, so the model is right.
There's no government matching?
No, we're completely private, yeah.
Okay, Elisa?
Yeah, so in Taiwan right now, we're still financially independent from the government. So right now, we don't take any equity. It's a fee-based program. However, we're looking into starting with more and more cross-border deal sourcing and syndication, basically moving into potentially a funding vehicle as well for some of the companies that come through the program. We do work closely with some of the government initiatives and also accelerators in Taiwan. So basically what we do is that because a lot of the people who come through our program, they're probably still at the early stage before they can actually get qualified into some of the government programs. So, but because we're connected with them, we're very familiar with the resources that will be available for them once they're at the stage where they're ready to get into either the accelerators or government programs. We do have some very exciting programs actually from Taiwan for startup founders, especially in the IoT space.
But that's separate from your organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though we are actually
let's move on because we're running out of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask about trust. which is very important for entrepreneurial learning and cognition, between local versus global ecosystems, because you allow applying network approach. Because global social survey data shows that each of the countries you represent, that societal trust in institutions and others is rather low. It's like 30–40% at maximum. And so I would like you to elaborate. Do your entrepreneurs trust local bases more, like home bases where you do operate, or do they trust more and they learn more the global bases, like that they come here to Silicon Valley or somewhere else? Where would you bring them? And this is what are the real motivations, and how do you really overcome this relatively low societal trust levels in institutions and in societies? Thank you.
That's a pretty deep
That's,
question.
how much time do we have?
You know, I think one reason somebody chooses the path of entrepreneurship is because someone else is not already paying you to do what your idea is, right? So there's an independence there to start with. And I think that in regard to seeing the value in the programs, it's self-evident. If the programs are successful, then the people are putting their trust into the program. I do think it's interesting, this whole question of, should you stay comfortable at home, or should you really challenge yourself because home is not so great? Does it really mean that you're saying home is not so great if you're trying to go and do more of a global thing? What kind of comments do you get from the entrepreneurs in regard to the value of having worked with your program?
So I'll maybe speak first about trust in general. I mean, yes, of course, if you're in your home country, you know the culture, you're familiar, so building trust is a lot easier. But we definitely encourage people to travel, right? And as the younger you are that you can travel, the better, because as you're formulating yourself, you get a more holistic view about how the rest of the world works.
Is one of the reasons for these programs that it helps the startup companies achieve trust at their next stage? They've kind of been vetted by what you're doing, or people see a value in what you're doing? Is that part of the function?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so they must want that, right? I mean, that's... Okay, I think that's such a deep question, we got to just put that one there. Go ahead.
What future technology are you guys most passionate about and you believe in that has legs for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Could be quantum computing, could be artificial intelligence, could be whatever. And what do you want your company to be involved in from that technology perspective? You can say that your company was involved in the legacy of that technology.
I'll start with a few areas. So basically, mission-driven is actually one huge area that we care a lot about. So there are actually a few verticals around that we have been basically digging into, both in terms of the events, workshops that we host, and also in terms of the entrepreneurs that we select into the program. So one area specifically is agriculture technology. So how do we feed the planet using technology, and how do we actually, do a better job with our Mother Earth? So that's one area. And of course, when it comes to circular economy, both of these two areas, Taiwan actually has a really strong foundation. So agriculture is one of our biggest strengths. And together with IoT, which is basically a lot of agriculture technology, it's a combination of those two. So we have already got the backbone of developing that. So that's one. Circular economy, a lot of people don't realize that in Taiwan, it's actually one of the strongest kind of area. We have like a 55% recycling rate versus, I think, in the States, 20–30%. Yeah. And when we have a lot of innovative materials, say for example, in terms of recycling, upcycling. So that's also another area that I personally am very passionate about. Of course, anything related to also autonomous driving, mobility, that's an area that I kind of feel like Taiwan used to be a huge part of Apple's supply chain, not just Apple, like mobile phones supply chain. I see the next phase, I think it's going to be a very important base for anything that's related to autonomous driving.
Okay.
So, when it comes to technology, now, we are technology agnostic, obviously, right? Because if you look at where the region is and they've still got a lot of core basic problems to solve, and they've got a long way to go. So we're not sitting in Southeast Asia thinking about how we're going to go to Mars, right? We're trying to figure out, some more fundamental things. But when it comes to technology and the penetration of technology across the world, I mean, I agree. I mean, agriculture is obviously a huge area. Because of just, if you look at demographics again and how they're moving and the growth and the need that we're going to have for basic grains and proteins, and how do we maximize harvesting of our land, I mean, no question about it. But I would personally love to see the 3.5 or so billion people around the world who are unbanked rise up and get,
be able to participate in the financial system of the world.
Of the world, yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Okay. John?
So we're looking for particularly in autonomous vehicle technology because we have a very kind of close relationship with the Hyundai Kia Motors. At the same time, just Korea is about launching the 5G LTE, the mobile connections. So anything related to the mobile contents, the platform and security, that could be very essential. And lastly, like they're saying, Korea is focused more into the clean energy technology at this moment, along with the smart city technology. So that could be, just main domains that we are focused on starting this year and moving forward.
Okay, so that brings us back to me because this is our final seminar in this series, but this fall, the theme of our series is going to be artificial intelligence in smart physical systems. So covers pretty much all of this, which is what I tried to do with this. And we may look at some big company work from Asia as well as some startup company work from Asia, because I think we're seeing an area in which the U.S. may not be in the lead. And thank you all for coming. So many people who've been regulars this spring. We really appreciate your presence every week. And you're always welcome. Bring your friends. Thanks.